They said Lagos was a city where dreams were made and broken in the same breath. A place where the traffic could trap you for hours, but love, if you were unlucky enough to find it, could trap you for life. Adanna Nwosu had no interest in love. She believed it was just another traffic jam, filled with noise, promises that went nowhere, and men who always wanted shortcuts. But one humid afternoon, outside the High Court of Lagos, her heart took a detour she never planned. "Objection, my lord." Adanna's voice rang through the courtroom, sharp and unflinching. She stood tall in her black gown, her eyes fixed on the company's lawyer who had been drowning a poor trader in a flood of technical terms. The judge adjusted his glasses. Sustained. Counsel, moved to the point. Adanna allowed herself the faintest smile. Her client, Mama Ifeoma, a woman who sold vegetables in Balagan Market, looked up at her with teary eyes. This wasn't just a case, it was survival. When the ruling came in her favor, the room erupted with murmurs. Adanna shook Mama Ifeoma's hand firmly. "You can go back to your stall now without fear," she whispered. The older woman pressed both hands together in gratitude. "God bless you, my daughter. You fight like a lion." Adanna laughed softly, but her face quickly returned to its calm, professional mask. She gathered her files and walked out, her heels clicking against the polished floor, echoing like a drumbeat of triumph. Outside, the Lagos air was sticky and hot. Hawkers pressed gala sausages and chilled pure water sachets toward passers-by. Bus conductors shouted destinations: Ojalegba, CMS, Yaba Strait. The courthouse steps buzzed with lawyers, clients, and police officers. Adanna was used to the chaos. It was the music of the city. She didn't expect a black Range Rover to roll up and stop directly in front of her. The tinted window slid down. A man sat behind the wheel, his shirt crisp white against his dark skin, his smile disarmingly easy. "Miss Nwosu?" he asked. She paused. "Yes. And you are?" "Chinonso Okeke." He tilted his head, his eyes amused. "You don't know me, but I know you. You just embarrassed my company in there." Adanna narrowed her eyes. She had gone against a firm representing a large logistics company. So this was him, the CEO. "If you're here to intimidate me, Mr. Okeke, I should warn you. I don't scare easily." Chinonso burst into laughter, the sound warm, not mocking. "Threaten you? No. I actually came to congratulate you. Not many people win against me. You're good." Adanna shifted her files against her chest, her lips twitching against a smile she didn't want to show. "I was just doing my job." "Maybe," Chinonso said, his eyes studying her with quiet intensity. "But not everyone does their job with fire in their eyes." Before she could answer, her driver pulled up. Adanna gave a polite nod and got into her car. But as they pulled away, her pulse raced strangely fast. Against her will, she thought of his smile. A week later, fate, or Lagos gossip, brought them together again. The ballroom of Eco Hotel glowed under crystal chandeliers. Waiters carried trays of champagne, and the air hummed with money and conversation. The charity gala had drawn in the city's finest, oil tycoons, politicians, celebrities. Adanna had come reluctantly, dragged by her senior colleague, who believed networking was as important as justice. She stood near a corner, sipping juice, when she felt eyes on her. Twice in 1 week, a familiar voice teased. "Lagos is either too small, or you're following me." Adanna turned. Chinonso stood there, handsome in a tailored navy suit, his confidence as smooth as glass. "Or maybe you're following me," she countered, lifting her glass. He grinned. "If I were, would you be upset?" Something about the way he asked, half playful, half serious, made her laugh despite herself. "I don't have time for men who play games." "Good," he said softly. "Neither do I." That night, they spoke longer than either of them intended. At first, about safe topics, books, travel, Lagos traffic. But then, deeper things slipped in, her dream of opening a free legal clinic, his memories of selling bread on the streets as a boy. By the time the gala ended, Adanna was unsettled. She had come to fight cases, not to lose her heart. The weeks that followed unfolded like a dream she hadn't planned. One evening, they sat on a rooftop in Victoria Island, the city glittering below them like a restless jewel. Chinonso raised a glass. "To victories. Yours in court, mine in business." Adanna clinked her glass reluctantly. "And what about defeats?" He smiled. Even defeats can teach us how to win. Another time, he drove her to Tarqua Bay, where the ocean crashed against the sand. Children chased kites, lovers strolled hand in hand, fishermen pulled nets heavy with catch. Adanna stood barefoot, the water kissing her toes, while Chinonso told her about his journey from poverty to power. "I made myself a promise," he said, his eyes fixed on the horizon, "that I'd never be poor again. Not me, not my children. Never." Adanna looked at him quietly. His ambition was fierce, like a fire that could either warm or burn. But in that moment, she admired it. At night, their phone calls stretched till dawn. She found herself laughing at jokes she would normally roll her eyes at. She found herself confessing fears she had never told anyone. And slowly, against everything she believed, Adanna began to fall. By the third month, everyone was talking. Her colleagues teased her, her relatives raised eyebrows, and society pages whispered, "The lawyer and the tycoon, Lagos' new power couple." Adanna pretended not to care. She still wore her seriousness like armor, but her heart betrayed her with every smile she shared with him. One evening, after dinner at his high-rise apartment overlooking the lagoon, Chinonso touched her hand gently. "You know, people like us, we're not supposed to find this kind of peace in Lagos." "What kind of peace?" she asked softly. "The kind where I forget the city exists, because you're here." Her chest tightened. Against her will, she wanted to believe him. But love in Lagos, like traffic, always came with hidden turns. And in the shadows of their blooming romance, danger waited. Because there was another pair of eyes watching them closely, eyes that belonged to Amara, Adanna's closest friend. And Amara carried a secret that could break everything. What began as an unexpected meeting outside the courthouse was turning into the kind of love story people envied. But envy itself was about to creep in. And soon, the city that had brought them together would also be the stage for deceit and betrayal. The clinking of glasses filled the restaurant as Adanna slid into a cushioned seat across from Amara. The two friends often met for dinner after long days at work. Amara, dressed in a green silk blouse, reached for Adanna's hand dramatically. "My dear lawyer, the whole of Lagos is talking about you," she teased. "Everywhere I go, it's Adanna and Chinonso this, Adanna and Chinonso that. Tell me, how does it feel to be the star of a fairy tale?" Adanna chuckled, stirring her drink. "Fairy tale? You know I don't believe in such things." "Oh, but the way your eyes sparkle when you talk about him says otherwise." Amara leaned closer, her perfume, expensive and sharp, filling the air. "Confess, you're in love." Adanna blushed despite herself. "Maybe I am. He's different, Amara. He listens. He respects me. He makes me laugh." Amara's smile froze for a split second before returning. She squeezed Adanna's hand. "If he makes you happy, then I'm happy for you." But inside, her heart burned. Because Amara knew Chinonso long before Adanna ever did. And what Adanna thought was new had roots that twisted far back. That night, Amara sat alone in her Lekki apartment, staring at her reflection in the mirror. The city lights blinked behind her through the glass windows. She poured herself a glass of wine, her lips trembling with bitterness. She remembered nights she had spent with Chinonso months before Adanna entered the picture. Nights filled with whispered promises and tangled sheets. He had told her she was special, that she was the woman who understood his hunger for success. But then he had disappeared, pulling away without explanation. And now, the same man was parading around town with her best friend. "No," Amara whispered to her reflection. "This isn't over." She picked up her phone, scrolled through her gallery, and stopped at an old photo, her and Chinonso, smiling on a beach in Ghana. Proof. Evidence. Ammunition. She didn't plan to use it yet, but the power of knowing she had it gave her a cruel kind of comfort. The following weekend, the three of them crossed paths at a mutual friend's birthday party in Ikoyi. The music was loud, champagne flowed, and the wealthy guests mingled like peacocks flashing feathers. Adanna held Chinonso's arm proudly as she introduced him to people. Amara watched from a distance, her lips pursed. When she finally approached them, her hug was warm, but her eyes were sharp. "Chinonso," she said sweetly, "long time no see." Chinonso's smile faltered for a heartbeat before he recovered. "Amara." "Yes, it's been a while." Adanna didn't notice the tension, but Amara did, and she fed on it. Later, while Chinonso excused himself to answer a call, Amara leaned toward Adanna. You know men in this city, don't you? They say all the right things until they get what they want. Adanna frowned. Why are you saying this? No reason, Amara replied, sipping her drink casually. Just be careful. Sometimes the ones who look the most perfect are the ones hiding the darkest secrets. Her words lodged themselves in Adanna's mind like a thorn, though she tried to brush them off. Meanwhile, another crack was forming elsewhere. Victor Obi, Chinonso's childhood friend and business partner, sat in his office late into the night. His tie was loose, his glass half filled with whiskey. On the table lay documents he had signed behind Chinonso's back, contracts that shifted profit into his own pocket. He hated how everyone praised Chinonso. Self-made man, tycoon, visionary. And what was he? The shadow standing beside him. His envy grew darker when he saw Adanna. She made Chinonso glow in ways Victor couldn't stand. So, when he bumped into Adanna at a networking event weeks later, he played his part. Adanna, he greeted smoothly. You look radiant tonight. She smiled politely. Victor, how is business? Business is good, he said, lowering his voice conspiratorially. But forgive me for saying this. I hope you know what you're getting into with Chinonso. He has habits. Adanna's smile froze. What do you mean? Victor shrugged, feigning regret. He's my brother. I shouldn't speak ill of him. Just don't give your whole heart too quickly. Lagos men. He let the sentence trail off. Adanna forced a laugh. You sound like Amara. Is everyone suddenly an expert on my relationship? Victor raised his glass. Just a friendly warning. But the seed was planted. One evening, Adanna sat alone in her apartment, flipping through case files, but her mind refused to focus. Chinonso had canceled dinner again, claiming a business emergency. She wanted to believe him, but Amara's warning and Victor's whisper tangled in her thoughts. When her phone buzzed with a text from Amara, "Are you sure you know everything about him?" Her chest tightened. She tried calling Chinonso, but he didn't answer. Hours later, when he finally returned her call, his voice was tired. I'm sorry, Ada. Meetings ran late. I'll make it up to you tomorrow. She wanted to ask questions. She wanted to demand honesty. But instead, she simply said, okay. And for the first time, doubt slid between them. Amara escalated slowly, cleverly. She began dropping hints in conversation, pretending to care while stirring suspicion. You trust him completely, don't you? She asked one day as they shopped together at a Acacia Mall. Of course, Adanna replied quickly, maybe too quickly. Amara smiled thinly. That's good. Trust is everything. Just remember, even shadows look solid until the sun moves. Adanna frowned. Why do you always speak in riddles? Amara laughed, linking arms with her. Because riddles make you think. Later that week, Amara sent Adanna an anonymous message from a hidden number. He's not who you think he is. Adanna's hands trembled as she read it. She confronted Amara immediately. Did you send me this? Amara's eyes widened innocently. Me? Why would I? Ada, I would never hurt you like that. But inside, Amara smiled. The cracks were widening. Through it all, Chinonso remained oblivious. He was too consumed by expanding his company, chasing bigger deals, and fighting unseen enemies in the business world. He didn't notice how Adanna's laughter sometimes faded too quickly, how her questions carried a sharper edge. Are you sure you're not hiding anything from me? She asked one night after dinner. He chuckled, kissing her forehead. The only thing I hide is how much I miss you when you're not here. His charm soothed her for the moment, but when the nights grew long and he wasn't beside her, her mind replayed Amara's words. One rainy night, Adanna sat by her window, watching lightning split the Lagos sky. She thought of her friend's smile, her partner's secrets, and Victor's cryptic warning. Her phone buzzed. A new message. No name, just a photo attachment. Her heart stopped as she opened it. It was Chinonso, laughing, his arm around a woman whose face was hidden by shadows. Adanna's breath caught. Her chest tightened. She wanted to believe it was a mistake. But the crack in the mirror had widened into something deeper, something she could no longer ignore. The city that had once wrapped her love in golden light now whispered shadows into her ears. Was Chinonso truly the man she believed in, or just another Lagos story of ambition and lies? The cracks had begun, and soon the mirror would shatter. The photo message haunted Adanna. It had no sender's name, no explanation. Just Chinonso, his smile too familiar, his arm too comfortable around a faceless woman. She tried to confront him the next evening when he picked her up for dinner at a new restaurant in Ikoyi. Chinonso, she began, her voice trembling slightly. Is there something you need to tell me? He glanced at her briefly, then focused back on the road. About what? About where you've been. About who you've been with. He chuckled softly, though unease flickered in his eyes. Ada, you're a lawyer. You should know better than to accuse without evidence. Her chest tightened. He wasn't denying, he was deflecting. Days later, Amara appeared at Adanna's apartment, bringing wine and an exaggerated smile. She had perfected the art of pretending to be the supportive friend. Ada, you look stressed. Is everything okay? Adanna hesitated before speaking. Someone sent me a photo of Chinonso with another woman. Amara's eyes widened, though inside she smirked. What? Oh no. Do you think it's true? I don't know, Adanna admitted. But he didn't exactly deny it when I asked. Amara reached out, squeezing her hand. Men like Chinonso, they always have a past. Maybe even a present they don't talk about. But you deserve to know the truth. Adanna swallowed hard. And how do I find it? Amara leaned closer, lowering her voice. Sometimes, the truth finds you when you look where he doesn't want you to. The following week, Adanna had a court session in Surulere. On her way back, curiosity tugged at her. She remembered Chinonso had once mentioned selling bread on the streets as a boy. Almost without thinking, she asked her driver to detour through Mushin, one of the rough neighborhoods he had grown up in. The streets buzzed with life. Children ran barefoot, women sold akara by the roadside, and old men argued over politics. Adanna stopped at a kiosk and struck up a conversation with an elderly shopkeeper. Do you know a man named Chinonso Okeke? She asked casually. The man squinted, then chuckled. Nonso? Of course. Who in this area doesn't know him? That boy was sharp. Too sharp. He left here with dreams bigger than this whole street. What kind of boy was he? Adanna pressed. The old man shrugged. Ambitious. But he made enemies too. There were rumors, shady deals, quick money, fights with friends. But look at him now, big man in Lagos. He made it. Adanna forced a smile, but her stomach nodded. Ambition was admirable, but ambition that trampled others? That was different. That evening, Victor called her unexpectedly. Adanna, he said smoothly, can we meet? There are things you should know about Nonso. She agreed, curiosity overpowering caution. They met at a quiet cafe in Victoria Island. Victor leaned in, his expression grave. Do you know how he got his first millions? Adanna frowned. He told me logistics, contracts. Victor shook his head. Half the contracts were mine. He cut me out, betrayed me. And he didn't stop there. He used people. Ada? Friends, women, anyone who could help him climb. I stayed because I thought we were brothers. But trust me, Nonso is not the man you think he is. Adanna's chest tightened. Why are you telling me this now? Because you deserve better, Victor said softly. And because I care about you. Adanna stared at him, shocked. His words carried both warning and desire. That night, Adanna tossed in bed, unable to sleep. Chinonso's laughter echoed in her memory, but so did the shopkeeper's words, Victor's accusations, and Amara's warnings. Her phone buzzed again. Another anonymous message. This time, not a photo, but a single line. Ask him about Ghana. Her hands shook as she read it. Ghana. What had Chinonso hidden there? The next day, Adanna confronted him directly in his office. The room was sleek and modern, with glass walls and the skyline of Lagos behind him. What were you doing in Ghana? She demanded, holding her phone up. Chinonso's face froze. For the first time, he looked truly rattled. Who told you that? Answer me. He sighed heavily, rubbing his forehead. It was years ago. I went there for business. But yes, I wasn't alone. Adanna's heart sank. With who? Silence. Then his voice, low and almost ashamed. Amara. The ground beneath Adanna seemed to shift. Her best friend. Her lover. The two people she trusted most. Her voice cracked. So it's true. All of it. Ada, it was before you. It meant nothing. Don't you dare tell me it meant nothing. She snapped, tears burning her eyes. Adanna left his office, her vision blurred by tears, the city outside suddenly hostile. The honking horns, the blaring music, the rushing crowd. It all felt like a cruel chorus mocking her. Her phone buzzed once more. A new message. This time, it was the photo again. But now, the woman's face was visible. Amara. Her closest friend. Her betrayer. The shadows of the past had stepped into the present, and Adanna's world was no longer the same. Love had brought her joy, but deceit had brought her pain. And betrayal had only just begun its work. The days after Adanna discovered the truth were heavy, like Lagos traffic under a pounding rain. She moved through her routines in silence, her laughter gone, her once bright spirit dulled by betrayal. She avoided Amara's calls. When her so-called best friend knocked on her door one evening, bearing her usual bottle of wine, Adanna refused to answer. She sat in darkness, her body trembling with anger. Every memory, every laugh, every secret they had shared felt poisoned. Chinonso called too, endlessly. Sometimes he left messages filled with regret, other times with anger. "Ada, it was before you," he insisted one night on voicemail. "I never lied about loving you. Don't throw us away because of the past." But for Adanna, the past was no longer a ghost. It was alive, breathing between them, choking her. Meanwhile, Chinonso had troubles of his own. Business meetings grew tense. Investors hesitated. Whispers circulated that his company was unstable. He knew the source, Victor, his childhood friend, had begun leaking confidential details to competitors. But worse than Victor was the man who returned from the shadows, Edward Martin. Edward had once been an investor in Chinonso's logistics empire, years ago, back when Chinonso was still clawing his way upward. But their partnership had ended in flames. Edward claimed Chinonso cheated him. Chinonso claimed Edward tried to strangle the company with greed. The truth was buried under lawsuits and settlements. Now, Edward was back in Lagos, and he wanted blood. It began with a meeting. Chinonso arrived at his office one Monday to find Edward waiting in his lobby. The man's presence turned heads, tall, broad-shouldered, dressed in a charcoal suit with a smile that never reached his eyes. "Nonso," Edward drawled as if they were old friends. "You've built quite the empire. But empires fall, don't they?" Chinonso stiffened. "You have no business here." "On the contrary," Edward said, stepping closer. "I have every business. You still owe me. And now, I intend to collect." "What do you want?" Chinonso asked, his voice low. Edward's smile widened. "Revenge. And I'll take it by destroying everything you love, your company, your name, even that pretty lawyer who thinks she knows you." Chinonso's fists clenched. "Stay away from her." Edward leaned in, his voice a whisper only Chinonso could hear. "I never go where I'm not welcome, Nonso. But when the door is already cracked open, why not walk through?" And with that, he left, leaving the smell of expensive cologne and quiet menace behind him. That night, Chinonso couldn't sleep. He sat at the edge of his bed, staring at the city lights. For the first time in years, fear coiled in his chest. Edward Martin was dangerous, not just because of money or influence, but because he knew things. Secrets. Deals Chinonso had buried deep. And Edward wasn't the only one digging. Victor had become bolder, and Amara was unpredictable. Chinonso buried his face in his hands. He could fight business rivals. He could silence competitors. But what terrified him was losing Adanna. Adanna, however, was already drifting further away. One evening, she went to her father's house in Suralere. Sitting on the old veranda with him, she finally confessed. "Papa," she whispered, her eyes glassy, "the man I love betrayed me. And my best friend, she betrayed me too." Her father, a retired teacher with lines of wisdom etched deep on his face, sighed heavily. "My daughter, Lagos is a city of masks. Some people smile at you while planning your downfall. But listen to me, pain is not the end of love. It is the test of it. The question is, will you stay in a love that wounds you, or walk away with your dignity intact?" Adanna swallowed hard, her heart torn. She wanted to believe Chinonso could change, that his love was real. But every time she closed her eyes, she saw Amara's face pressed against his shoulder. The tension finally came to a head at a cocktail event on Victoria Island. Adanna hadn't planned to attend, but her firm insisted. She wore a black dress that hugged her figure, her hair swept neatly back, her face composed like armor. Across the hall, she spotted Chinonso. Their eyes met briefly, but she turned away. Then she saw Edward Martin. She didn't know him yet, but his presence was impossible to ignore. He moved through the room like a king inspecting his subjects. When his gaze landed on her, his lips curved into a knowing smile. Later, as she stepped outside for air, Edward approached. "You must be Adanna," he said smoothly. "The lawyer who captured Chinonso's heart." She frowned. "And you are?" An old acquaintance. Let me give you some advice. Be careful with that man. He leaves destruction behind him. Adanna stiffened. Why should I believe you? Edward's smile never faltered. You shouldn't. But when you start seeing the cracks for yourself, remember I warned you. He handed her a business card and walked away, leaving her unsettled. Inside, Chinonso watched from a distance, fury simmering in his chest. He saw Edward speak to Adanna, saw the way she slipped his card into her purse, and something inside him snapped. Victor, standing nearby, smirked. Looks like Edward is making himself at home. Careful, brother. The walls are closing in. Chinonso turned on him. You think I don't know what you're doing? You'll regret crossing me. Victor's smirk widened. The difference between us, Chinonso, is that I know when to strike. And you, he glanced toward Adanna. You're too busy protecting what you're already losing. That night, Adanna sat in her apartment, Edward's card on the table before her. She hadn't called him, but the temptation gnawed at her. She wanted the truth. She wanted answers Chinonso wouldn't give her. But deep down, she feared Edward's words might be the key that unlocked a door she could never close again. And somewhere across the city, Edward Martin raised a glass of whiskey in his penthouse and whispered to himself, "Let the games begin." The morning came heavy and gray, clouds hanging low over the skyline. From the penthouse window, Chinonso watched the city stir to life below, but his mind was not on the world outside. It was on Edward Martin, the man who had returned like a ghost refusing to stay buried. He had hardly slept. Each time he closed his eyes, he saw Edward's face, smug and certain, the same face that once sat across boardroom tables, smiling as deals were signed. But now, Edward wasn't after money. He was after ruin. Behind him, the sound of soft footsteps stirred. Adanna emerged from the bedroom, her silk robe drawn tight, her face pale. She had stayed the night reluctantly after another argument, neither able to let go, neither able to trust fully. "Good morning," Chinonso said softly. She slid onto a chair by the breakfast bar, avoiding his eyes. "Is it?" The silence stretched. Then, quietly, she asked, "Who exactly is Edward Martin?" Chinonso's chest tightened. "A mistake from my past. Nothing more." "Don't lie to me," Adanna snapped, her voice sharper than she intended. "He came to me, Chinonso. He told me to be careful with you." Chinonso's jaw clenched. "Stay away from him. He'll twist everything. He's poison." Her gaze lingered on him, searching, desperate for honesty. "And what are you hiding that makes you so afraid of him?" He said nothing, and his silence screamed louder than words. 2 days later, the headlines hit the newspapers. Tycoon Chinonso Okeke under investigation for fraudulent contracts. Adanna sat frozen in her office when she saw it. The article detailed alleged shady deals, offshore accounts, and shell companies linked to Chinonso's empire. The accusations were thin, circumstantial, but they were enough to ignite whispers across Lagos. Her phone buzzed. It was Amara. "Have you seen the news?" her friend asked, feigning shock. "Ada, I warned you about him. Men like Chinonso build empires on sand." Adanna closed her eyes, her heart pounding. "Stop it, Amara. Please." But Amara's voice was relentless. "You don't have to go down with him. Distance yourself before it's too late." Adanna hung up, but her hands shook. Later that evening, Chinonso stormed into her apartment, his tie loose, his face dark with fury. "It's Edward," he growled. "He's feeding lies to the press. He wants to destroy me." "Are they lies?" Adanna asked quietly. He froze, staring at her. "You think I'm guilty?" "I think," she whispered, tears brimming, "I don't know you anymore." The next day, unable to quiet the storm in her mind, Adanna did what she had never done before. She went to Chinonso's office without telling him. The building was sleek, glass and steel towering over the street. Inside, employees greeted her respectfully, but she felt their eyes linger. Whispers followed her down the hallway. She entered his private office. The shelves gleamed with awards and plaques. But what caught her eye was a locked drawer in his desk. Normally, she would never pry, but something in her gut urged her on. She searched the desk until she found a small key hidden behind a framed photo. Heart pounding, she unlocked the drawer. Inside were folders, documents, contracts, and beneath them, photographs, old ones. She froze as she pulled one out. It was a photo of Chinonso and Edward, years ago, shaking hands, both smiling like brothers. Behind them stood Amara, her arm linked casually through Chinonso's. Adanna's chest constricted. She shuffled through the papers. Some bore strange signatures, some referenced accounts in Ghana, others in Dubai. Her lawyer's mind quickly pieced together what they implied. Shell corporations, funds moved through loopholes, gray areas that could tip into illegality. A noise behind her made her jump. The door creaked open. Looking for something? Victor stood there, smirking, his tie loosened, his eyes glinting with satisfaction. Adanna's throat tightened. Victor, what are you doing here? Better question, he said smoothly. What are you doing here? He walked into the room, closing the door behind him. You see, Ada, you're smart. Smarter than Chinonso gives you credit for. You know what these documents mean. You know he's not the saint he pretends to be. Adanna's pulse quickened. Why are you telling me this? Because you deserve better. And because I've been waiting for the right time to take what's mine. He leaned closer, his voice dropping. Help me, and I'll bring him down. You'll be free of his lies. Adanna recoiled. You're using me. Victor chuckled. Call it partnership. He pointed at the drawer. Take another look. The walls of his empire are already crumbling. All you need to do is step aside and let them fall. She stared at him, anger and fear warring in her chest. Then she gathered the papers quickly, locked the drawer, and pushed past him. You're both liars, she hissed. Victor only laughed as she fled. That night, Adanna sat in her car, the city lights blurring through her tears. She clutched her phone, Edward's card burning in her purse. Finally, with shaking hands, she dialed the number. His voice was calm when he answered. Adanna, I wondered when you'd call. I need the truth, she whispered. Then meet me tomorrow, Edward replied smoothly. And I'll show you who Chinonso really is. The walls of Chinonso's empire were not just made of steel and glass. They were made of secrets that now stood exposed in the hands of those who wished to see him fall. And Adanna, caught between love and betrayal, was about to step deeper into the maze. The next evening, Adanna arrived at the address Edward had sent. It was a luxury penthouse in Victoria Island, the kind that overlooked the lagoon with glass walls and silent elevators. Her heels clicked softly against the polished marble floor as she stepped inside. Edward greeted her with that same unsettling smile. Adanna, he said smoothly, welcome. Can I offer you a drink? She shook her head. I didn't come here to drink. I came for the truth. He chuckled, motioning for her to sit. Direct. I like that. On the coffee table between them lay a folder. Edward slid it toward her. Open it. Adanna hesitated, then pulled it open. Inside were documents, contracts, receipts, bank transfers, each stamped with Chinonso's company logo, each tracing money to offshore accounts, each piece damning. Her hands trembled as she flipped through them. These can't be real. They're very real, Edward replied calmly. Your lover built his empire on fraud. He betrayed partners, stole from investors, and when I tried to stop him, he destroyed me. Adanna's throat tightened. Why show me this? Because you're the only one who can bring him down. The courts will listen to you, and I will protect you when he falls. She stared at him, her heart pounding. You want me to betray him? Edward leaned closer, his voice low and dangerous. He already betrayed you. All I'm asking is that you stop protecting a man who doesn't deserve you. Across the city, Chinonso sat in his office, his phone buzzing relentlessly. Journalists demanded statements. Clients pulled out of contracts. Banks froze accounts. His empire, once untouchable, was collapsing piece by piece. Victor strolled in without knocking, his smirk infuriatingly calm. You look tired, Chinonso, he said. Trouble sleeping? Chinonso glared at him. I know what you're doing. You and Edward, you're behind this. Victor shrugged. Edward is clever. He plays chess while you're still moving checkers. And as for me, I'm only collecting what I'm owed. You were my brother, Chinonso growled. Brothers don't leave each other in the shadows. Victor snapped, his mask slipping. You stole the spotlight, Chinonso. Now watch me take it back. Before Chinonso could reply, Victor walked out, leaving the bitter taste of betrayal behind him. That night, Adanna sat in her apartment. The folder Edward had given her spread across the table. The evidence screamed guilt, but her heart screamed love. She thought of Chinonso's smile, the nights at Tarqua Bay, the rooftop dinners. Was it all built on lies? Her phone buzzed. A message from Edward. You know what you have to do. Meet me tomorrow at noon. Together, we end him. Another message came minutes later, this time from Chinonso. Please, Ada. Trust me. Don't let them turn you against me. She buried her face in her hands. She was standing at the edge of a cliff, and whichever way she stepped, someone would fall. The next day, Adanna met Edward again, this time in a quiet restaurant. He arrived with a confident air, as though victory was already his. "I spoke to a prosecutor," he told her. "If you testify, Chinonso won't stand a chance." Adanna's chest constricted. "And if I don't?" Edward smiled coldly. "Then you go down with him. Do you think the world will believe you're innocent? His fingerprints are all over you. The trips, the dinners, the gifts. You've been living off his empire. If he burns, you burn too." Her blood ran cold. Edward wasn't just offering her a choice. He was threatening her. "You're a monster," she whispered. He leaned back casually. "No, Adanna. I'm a survivor. The question is, are you?" That evening, Chinonso came to her door. His eyes were bloodshot, his suit wrinkled, his usual confidence gone. "Ada," he pleaded, "listen to me. Edward is lying. He's twisting everything. Yes, I made mistakes, but I never built my life on lies. Not with you." Tears stung her eyes. "Then explain these." She threw the folder at him, the papers scattering across the floor. Chinonso froze. "Where did you get this?" "From Edward," she said bitterly. "He says you're a fraud." Chinonso's hands shook as he gathered the papers. "These are real documents, but they've been altered. Edward has money, connections. He can make anything look like the truth." Adanna's voice broke. "How do I know you're not lying to me too?" Chinonso reached for her hands, his voice raw. "Because I love you. And if you walk away, I lose more than my empire. I lose my heart." Her tears spilled over. She wanted to believe him. She needed to. But Edward's words echoed in her mind. "If he burns, you burn too." As the night deepened, Adanna stood at the window, looking out at the restless lights of Lagos. Behind her, Chinonso sat slumped on the couch, broken in a way she had never seen before. On the table between them lay two phones, hers, with Edward's threats still glowing on the screen, and his, buzzing with missed calls from investors and lawyers. The walls were closing in, and soon, she would have to choose, stand by the man she loved, or join the enemy who promised to save her. But either choice carried betrayal. The trap was set, and Adanna was caught at its center. Edward had sharpened his knives. Victor had lit the fire, and Chinonso's empire was trembling on its foundation. Love was no longer enough. Survival demanded sacrifice. The courtroom was packed. Journalists filled the back rows, their cameras ready. Business rivals whispered in satisfaction. Investors waited to see whether the empire of Chinonso Okeke would crumble before their eyes. Adanna sat at the witness bench, her palms clammy. Every gaze seemed fixed on her. She could feel Edward stare from across the room, steady and smug. Victor leaned casually in his chair, his smirk a cruel reminder of betrayal. And then there was Chinonso, tall, defiant, but with shadows under his eyes. He looked at her not with anger, but with something heavier, a plea. The judge called the court to order. The prosecutor rose, voice sharp. "Miss Adanna Nwosu, you have been closely associated with the defendant. We ask you, based on your knowledge, do you believe Mr. Okeke built his empire on fraud?" The room fell silent. Adanna's throat closed. In her mind, she saw Edward sliding the folder across the table. "Testify, and I'll protect you." She saw Chinonso on her doorstep, voice raw. "If you walk away, I lose my heart." She looked down at her trembling hands. Then, slowly, she raised her eyes. "I believe," she began, her voice shaking, "that mistakes were made. But fraud? Betrayal? No, I do not believe Chinonso is guilty of the crimes he's accused of." Gasps rippled through the courtroom. Edward's smile froze. Victor's jaw tightened. The prosecutor pressed forward. "But you were given evidence. Documents. Transfers. Surely you saw." "I saw papers that could be twisted." Adanna cut in, her voice steadier now. "I saw accusations from men who had every reason to destroy him. But what I also saw was the truth behind those walls. I saw the man who fought to build something out of nothing. I cannot condemn him." The court adjourned for the day. Outside, chaos erupted. Reporters swarmed, shoving microphones at her face. "Miss Nwosu, are you protecting him out of love? Do you realize you may be complicit? Is Chinonso Okeke innocent, or just clever?" Before she could answer, Edward appeared, pulling her aside roughly. His voice was low, venomous. "You just made the biggest mistake of your life," he hissed. "You chose him over survival. And now, you'll burn with him." Adanna yanked her arm free, her eyes blazing. No, Edward. I chose the truth. And one day, your lies will choke you. For the first time, his calm cracked. His jaw tightened as he turned away. That evening, Victor stormed into Edward's penthouse, furious. She was supposed to break him, he spat. Your plan was flawless. What went wrong? Edward poured himself a drink calmly. Love went wrong. I underestimated her heart. Victor slammed his fist on the table. Then we finish this another way. I'll expose him myself. Edward's eyes narrowed. Be careful, Victor. Don't forget, you're in this as deep as he is. If Chinonso falls, so do you. Victor hesitated. For the first time, fear flickered in his eyes. Meanwhile, Chinonso sat with Adanna in his apartment. The city stretched out beyond the windows, glowing with restless lights. You didn't have to defend me, he said quietly. Yes, I did, she whispered. Because I know the man you are, even if the world doesn't. His hand covered hers. For a long time, neither spoke. The silence between them was no longer filled with suspicion, but with something fragile, hope. But outside, the storm had not passed. Days later, Edward struck again. New evidence surfaced. This time video recordings of private meetings, snippets of conversations taken out of context. The media exploded. Adanna felt the ground shifting again. She had stood for him once. But how many storms could love survive? At a press conference, Chinonso faced the world. Cameras flashed as he stood at the podium, voice steady. I am not perfect. I have made mistakes. But I built my life with blood and sweat, not lies. And I will not be destroyed by men who fear my success. The crowd roared, divided between belief and doubt. In the shadows, Edward watched, lips curved into a thin smile. This isn't over. And beside him, Victor swallowed hard, realizing that in Edward's game, even allies could become pawns. The war was no longer just about business or betrayal. It was about survival. Edward had laid his trap, but Adanna had chosen her side. Now, as the city whispered and the empire trembled, the question was clear. Would their love endure the storm or collapse with everything else? The city was restless. Newspaper headlines screamed of scandal. Talk shows debated endlessly. Is Chinonso Okeke a fraud or a victim of conspiracy? Investors wavered, employees panicked, and the once stable empire swayed like a tower in a storm. Adanna walked the crowded streets of Lagos in silence, her thoughts heavier than the humid air. Every step she took echoed the same question. Could she still love him, after everything? Edward's penthouse had turned into a war room. Screens lit up with charts, news feeds, and reports. He paced like a predator, his calm mask slipping. She ruined everything, he growled, slamming a glass onto the table. She chose him. Victor, seated across from him, smirked bitterly. I told you, love blinds people. She'll drag herself down with him. Edward's eyes narrowed. Not if I finish him first. He turned toward Victor. You leaked the first set of documents. Now it's time for the final blow. We expose every skeleton in his closet. We make sure he never recovers. Victor hesitated. The hunger for revenge had carried him this far, but fear gnawed at him now. And what happens to me when the dust settles? Don't think the world won't drag my name through the mud too. Edward's gaze was icy. You wanted him destroyed. There's no turning back now. That evening, Adanna sat again in her father's compound in Surulere. The old man watched her quietly, his pipe smoke curling into the evening air. Papa, she whispered, I don't know what to do. If I stay, I risk everything. If I leave, I lose him. Her father nodded slowly. Life is not always about choosing what is safe, my daughter. It is about choosing what is right. Ask yourself, does he fight for truth or for lies? Does he love you, or does he love only himself? Tears stung her eyes. He says he loves me. And do you believe him? She swallowed hard. After a long pause, she whispered, Yes, I do. Her father reached for her hand. Then love him with your eyes open, not closed. Love that is blind is destruction, but love that sees clearly, that is strength. The next morning, news broke again, but this time, it wasn't Chinonso on the front page. It was Victor. Leaked audio recordings revealed his role in sabotaging his own company, his secret deals with competitors, and even private conversations plotting against Chinonso. The same fire he had stoked had turned back on him. Chinonso read the headlines in stunned silence. His empire was still wounded, but Victor's downfall shifted the tide. When Adanna saw the news, she realized the truth. Edward's greatest weapon had been Victor's envy. And now, that weapon had broken. But Edward wasn't finished. That night, as Chinonso prepared for another round of meetings, his phone buzzed. A text message. Come to the old warehouse at Apapa Port. Alone, or the world will see everything you've tried to hide. Chinonso's blood ran cold. He knew Edward was baiting him, but he couldn't risk more destruction. He went. Adanna found out an hour later. A single call from an unknown number told her, if you ever want to see him again, come to Apapa. Her chest tightened. For a moment, fear rooted her to the floor. Then, with trembling hands, she grabbed her car keys and drove into the night. The warehouse loomed dark and silent, the smell of salt water heavy in the air. Inside, Edward stood waiting, flanked by two men. Chinonso was there too, his hands clenched, his face set in grim defiance. You've destroyed enough, Chinonso spat. What do you want from me? Edward smirked. Everything. Your company. Your reputation. Your woman. You took my future, Nonso. Now I take yours. Adanna stepped forward from the shadows, her voice steady. No, you'll take nothing. Edward's eyes widened. Ah, the loyal lawyer. Tell me, Adanna, how long until you realize he's not worth it? She met his gaze without flinching. I already realized it. And I chose him anyway. Edward's smile faltered. For the first time, he saw that his power over her had shattered. In the chaos that followed, one of Edward's men turned on him. Victor's downfall had shaken loyalties, and promises of money no longer held. Within minutes, the confrontation dissolved into shouting, threats, and betrayal. Chinonso pulled Adanna toward the exit. Together, they escaped into the humid night, leaving Edward raging in the darkness. Days later, on the quiet shores of Tarqua Bay, the same place where their love had blossomed, Adanna and Chinonso stood side by side. The ocean stretched endless before them, waves crashing with relentless force. Chinonso took her hands, his voice raw. I can't promise perfection, Ada. My past is full of shadows. But my future, if you'll have me, will be full of you. Stay. Build with me. Forgive me. Adanna's heart ached. She thought of Edward's lies, Victor's envy, Amara's betrayal. She thought of nights filled with doubt. But she also thought of laughter, of love, of promises whispered under starlight. Tears rolled down her cheeks as she whispered, I choose you, but don't ever make me regret it. Chinonso pulled her into his arms, the ocean roaring around them. For the first time in months, she felt the weight lift from her chest. Edward Martin vanished from the city, his empire crumbling with him. Victor faced charges for fraud and betrayal. Amara disappeared too, her once polished reputation in ruins. But Chinonso and Adanna endured. Their love was no longer innocent, no longer blind. It was scarred, tested, and hardened by fire. And in a city where dreams were broken daily, theirs became something rare, a love that survived deceit, betrayal, and the storm.